Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today, the modern release I want to look at is God of War Ragnarok, which is a direct continuation from God of War 2018 that I reviewed a couple of days ago. So how does it stack up compared to 2018, which is a game that I gave a platinum rank and said is one of the best video game stories ever told? Well, Ragnarok stacks up pretty darn well and is a great cap off for the duology of the Norse mythology here. I did have some gripes with it, and we'll talk about those, but for the most part, this game really lives up to the 2018 game. But I want to talk about some of my favorite things about the game. I will be touching on some spoilers, primarily with gameplay mechanics, since there are some changes from the original game that you don't get until like midway through the game or even later. So there will be some spoilers in that regard. I will be touching on story just a little bit, but I will be pretty much going over full spoilers for 2018 to start off this review. So if you don't want spoilers in any regard, I will give you spoilers that are specific to Ragnarok throughout this video. I'll give you some notice so you have time to skip forward, but I will be going into detail about the ending of 2018. So if you haven't played those, stop this, go play them, and then come back to here. With that out of the way, let's talk about Ragnarok. So this game starts off a couple of years down the line past 2018. Atreus has grown up. He's gotten significantly older. He's honing some of his powers that he's recognized since realizing that he is a god. You have the ending of 2018 where you kill Balder. Freya gets pissed, and this big curse has gone over the land, creating like a frigid hellscape. Freya's still pissed at you. She is actively hunting you down. This is seen at the very beginning of the game. You have a new mechanic where you have like sled dogs, which is really cool. It's a new way of traversal along with like the boats that you know and love from 2018. So there's new traversal mechanics for places that you don't have a boat, where there's not water, which is very welcome, especially for such a huge world. There's lots to explore in this game. It's a really beautiful, great amount of area. You have tons of places to go to, so it's nice to have some more traversal options. But after killing Balder and Freya's pissed at you, Atreus is trying to learn his about his heritage more. He's trying to control his powers that he's had, and early on in the game you come across Thor and Odin. They come to your home to kind of talk to you about what's going on. And if we remember from 2018, you also ended up killing Thor's sons. So he's probably not super stoked. But he comes in. It's a very intimidating scene. I actually love how they depict Thor in this one. He feels very much like the mythology version, not so much like the MCU or anything like that, which is to be expected. This is more mythology. This is less comic booky. But Thor comes in. He's very imposing. He's very large. He sets his hammer down the table. Kratos puts his axe down to show that they're just talking here. Odin comes in, and this is your first glimpse of these two very imposing figures, which is really cool. Odin, I guess, isn't so imposing in his stature, but he is clearly the one in charge here, and you can tell from an early standpoint that everyone is very deathly afraid of Odin, and for good reason. You can tell that he has something powerful that he holds over everybody else. And you start to talk. They tell you, hey, let's call a ceasefire here. We're not going to do anything to you. You don't go after us, and we're good. Kratos refuses, not because he doesn't want peace, because he does clearly want to have some more peace in his life. He wants to protect Atreus, but he knows that something sinister is going on. He knows he can't trust Odin, especially from Mimir telling him, and he refuses, and you get into a huge fight with Thor, which is one of the coolest ways to kick off any video game ever. Fighting Thor is a fantastic start. You even actually die in the opening section, and he revives you, telling you that you're not going down. Like, he's going to dictate when you go down. He shocks you back to life. It's a really cool way to kick off this game. And it really showcases that this is going to be a fight for the ages. The whole game is prepping for essential war with the Aesir here. And it's a beautiful setup, like I said. It's a nice continuation from 2018, and it feels very much like a great sequel in pretty much every respect. You still have the equipment that you have from the previous game. They have different like stat boosts and everything. They give you different things that you can combine with your abilities. You have new abilities to go around this time. This time you start off with the Blades of Chaos and the Leviathan Axe right away. Atreus has some new stuff too that he works with. One of the coolest things that they implemented, that's also one of its pitfalls, is having Atreus as a playable person this time around. You have some sections where you actually play as Atreus. Now, I think there's one too many of these. but I think they're pretty fun early on. As they get a little bit later, they get a little long. There's some sections that just feel a little bit draggy, and that's my biggest criticism with Ragnarok as a sequel. It does so many things right. It keeps the combat, everything feels fluid and beautiful, the story's progressing, everything feels really tense, and the new environments are really fun to explore. But when you get to some of these sections, it just slows down to a crawl sometimes, specifically when you switch to just playing as Atreus. And it does feel cool to play as him, though, because it feels like you are losing a lot of your power, and clearly you are. Atreus is not the god of war. He is not nearly as large or imposing or battle tested as Kratos is. So it's nice to see like how you fare without your dad. And Kratos is even better in this game in terms of development. He's worried about Atreus. He wants to protect him as much as possible while also helping him like learn more about his heritage. Mostly he wants to like keep him from all of these things, keep him from the Aesir especially, and he knows if he keeps going down this path about learning about his giant heritage, he's going to get into some trouble. So he wants to stop him, but he doesn't want to like stifle him. He doesn't want to lose him either. And it's just a beautiful push and pull. We get that more from the coming from the previous game. It doesn't feel nearly as like difficult this time, as rigid. They feel a little more close now, which is a cool thing to see. But you can tell that there is still some tension, and with Atreus wanting so desperately to learn about these things and Kratos wanting to avoid war at all costs, it can be really tense at some points, to the point that the reason that you split off from Kratos in the first place and play as just Atreus is because he's looking for answers by himself, and Kratos does not like that. So there's lots of push and pull throughout this game. It's quite a long adventure, 40-50 hours going for like full completion. This game is slightly easier to fully complete if you're going for like the Platinum Trophy than God of War 2018 was, and it's definitely worth it in my opinion. I think there's a lot to go for in this game, and finding all the extra stuff is a lot of fun. The DLC as well for the Valhalla DLC that they put out is spectacular. It's something that I didn't expect them to put out at all. I thought they were going to put out a paid DLC maybe, but I didn't hear anything about it. Then all of a sudden it was a free update, and it's like tons of new content. It's like a roguelike in a lot of ways. It's really beautiful, and I love what they did with that. I won't touch on those spoilers at all, but it is an absolutely beautiful way to cap off this game that I didn't expect or see coming at all. You have lots of new characters as well. You have like a new hub world here where you have I can't remember the squirrel's name. It's voiced by ProZD or Sungwon, one of my favorite YouTubers, voice actors. He's phenomenal. He is Ratatoskr. There we go. He is really, really funny. He's like the tree and I don't remember all the names. I'm a little rusty now on my Norse mythology, but he comes up and he has different personalities that he has throughout the tree that essentially where you're headquartered at. He's hilarious. He's probably one of the best NPCs in this game, if not the very best. He does a lot to make the game really fun and like lift some of the heaviness off of you. Does a really fantastic job. I like his inclusion a whole lot. I love all the side characters' interactions, the way that you go on side quests and everything, and the way that you bring all the characters together. They do it a very, very great justice here. I think the way that they've written this story, they did a phenomenal job. It's a great continuation of 2018. Some of my biggest gripes I talked about previously were like the slow down of the pacing, but I also didn't like combat nearly as much. They did add a new thing. This is my first spoiler here that I'm going to be talking about in terms of the gameplay mechanics. About midway through the game, maybe 2/3 of the way, somewhere in there, you get a spear. It's your newest weapon that you get. I won't talk about why you get this spear, but it's phenomenal. It's a beautiful weapon that you can throw and have it detonate. You can like put spikes down, little like trip mines, and you can detonate them. It adds a whole lot of depth to the combat system, which is already phenomenal. And you get it a little bit later than I would have hoped. I think that's one of my bigger things too. I wanted this earlier to mix up the combat, because the combat is still great, but having this tool in your arsenal makes it even more phenomenal. Now, I will say that the flow of combat does feel a little bit different than in 2018. I remembered like getting parries and blocking being a little bit easier, or feeling like you could cancel certain things into block in better windows. It just feels differently to me. It's still phenomenal. It's still a great system, but I prefer 2018's combat in terms of how it flows to Ragnarok's, if that makes any sense. It just doesn't feel like I can do the same like timings that I could in 2018, which just threw me off trying to play through this one. But the new weapon is spectacular. This is one of those things that really does a lot for the game. Once you get that, it really starts to pick up. You have new areas that you can explore because you have this new weapon. You have new challenges you can complete. It's really special getting this new weapon. I really love that aspect of it. But the other thing I really don't like about this game, the biggest criticism I had, and I've talked about this in other videos, is some of the things that they did to make it so that it could perform on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. As much as I want games for everybody, as much as I'm so happy that people that only have a PlayStation 4 can play Ragnarok because it's such a spectacular experience, some of the things that you have to sacrifice in order to get it on the PlayStation 4, for me as a PlayStation 5 owner, just kind of suck. You have so many sections where you'll crouch under a little like clearing and you have to walk through really slowly, and typically they do this to mask loading screens. On the PlayStation 5, this would be absolutely no problem because you can just use the solid state drive and ignore these sections, so you can have everything loaded in without having to load it in the background or load it while you're doing these little walking sections, or you crawl through a crevice in a wall. This was fine on the PlayStation 4. This was something to mask loading screens. We liked this idea, and it gave a chance for the characters to talk, which they still do in this game, but it was too much this time. They had it way too often, and it was so tedious, especially since we already experienced this in God of War 2018. So for me as a PlayStation 5 user, I was like, I wish they'd just made this for PlayStation 5. Take advantage of the new technology and showcase what this would be like without these tedious loading screens, without killing the pacing of this game. Because honestly, if this game had slightly better pacing and didn't have these stupid little sections, this would easily be a slam dunk in terms of this being over God of War 2018. For me at least, because the story is equally excellent or even maybe a little bit better in a lot of instances. But these little things really started to drive me crazy by the end of my playthrough. Again, this is like a 40-hour playthrough. By the time I finally got done, some of the backtracking you do to do side quests when you finally get your new weapon, get new abilities that you can unlock new things, it's just really boring to go through these sections over and over that take a long time to get through because they have these stilted little spots where you have to mask a loading screen for the PlayStation 4 version. It's just kind of frustrating. They couldn't build a separate PS5 version, I understand that, so I wish they would have just made it a PS5 exclusive. Again, as much as I love PlayStation 4 users, and I'm glad you got to experience the game, it was very frustrating for me and kind of killed my enjoyment in a lot of ways. So that's the biggest hang up I have with this game. Everything else really flows together in a beautiful way. This is a phenomenal sequel. Again, a great way to cap off this duology here. I love what they did with God of War Ragnarok. Some of the side bosses too, some of the end game content is incredibly challenging and so much fun, so rewarding to finally finish. This game is definitely still worth your time. This very much feels like Tears of the Kingdom for me. It is a very worthy sequel, still a 10 out of 10 experience. I love it, absolutely, but it doesn't quite eclipse the original in too many ways, just because it has too many little faults here. So that's my biggest criticism of God of War Ragnarok. But if you loved God of War 2018, you're probably going to love this game. I'm going to give Ragnarok a platinum rank. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.